Good morning, folks. Welcome to the first webinar to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the PoSH Act 2013. What better way to kick off the celebrations than to have two exceptional women who have, by the sheer force of willpower, changed the destiny of millions of women in India. To begin with, I'm honored to introduce Kavita Srivastava, President PUCL and co-founder of Vishaka. Unless you have been living under a rock for the past many years, you most definitely would have heard of Vishaka, the organization that filed a PIL that eventually led to the landmark Vishaka Supreme Court judgment, followed a few years later by the law that we now popularly known as the PoSH law, the Prevention of Sexual Harassment of Women in India. We Kavita, delighted to have you join us for this sort of 10th year anniversary celebrations, and we're privileged to have with us Bhanwari Devi ji. She is really the moving force behind the Vishaka judgment. She's battled for social justice, change, not just for herself, but also for the rights of children and women across the country. I cannot overstate this. We are deeply honored to have her join us today in the webinar. And we look forward to hearing from her as well in terms of her views about all of the law and how it's progressed, what women need to do, and so on and so forth. So, Kavita, please convey our delight and also that we are exceptionally honored to have her join us today for this particular session.
तो भवरी आपका स्वागत कर रहे हैं और आपको कहना चाह रहे हैं कि बहुत ही खुशी है कि जब हम जो कार्यस्थल पर यौन हिंसा कानून का 10वां वर्ष की मना रहे हैं, हम इस 10वां वर्ष की एनिवर्सरी मना रहे हैं, तब आप हाजिर हैं, आप शामिल हैं इस बातचीत में, तो अपनी खुशी इजहार कर रहे हैं और बताना चाहते हैं सबको जो लोग ऑनलाइन जुड़े हैं कि आपके कारण ये फैसला आया था, आप ही के कारण, आपकी ताकत और मजबूती और धक्का देने से ये सारा बना था. ठीक,
परफेक्ट, थैंक यू.
She also is thanking you and everybody.
Thank you, Bhanwari Devi ji. All right. So, Kavita, let's kick off. We will bring Bhanwari Devi ji into the conversation as we go along. But, everybody, literally everybody, especially if you work in a corporate, but even outside, I think is now familiar with, Bhanwari Devi ji's fight for justice, as well as the now famous landmark Supreme Court judgment in the Vishaka matter. Could you share a little bit with all of us about the journey in terms of how it happened? We are all broadly familiar with the brutal assault on Bhanwari Devi ji, followed by the battle for her personal justice, as well as the PIL that was filed in the Supreme Court. But if you can share a little more of the details, how it happened, it would really benefit the viewers and the listeners to get a better understanding of how the law came into being, how the Supreme Court order got passed, as well as how the law came.
तो भवरी हमसे पूछ रहे हैं कि ये पूरी यात्रा क्या थी, कैसे शुरू किया, तो मैं अंग्रेजी में जवाब दूंगी. आप तो जानते ही हैं हमारी यात्रा क्या थी. So this journey started 31 years ago with Bhanwari here. Bhanwari was part of the Women's Development Program of the state of Rajasthan, and the grassroots worker of this program was called a Sathan, a friend. And please remember the time where literacy in the state for women is less than 20%, where literacy for tribal women, Muslim women is like 2%. And there's hardly any women's representation. It was just because the 6th 5-year plan and then the 7th 5-year plan brought in women. Before that, our 5-year plans never had women, that the government of Rajasthan took this initiative to start the Women's Development Program, whose main objective was to create platforms at the grassroots level and have women come and sit and deliberate and talk about what their suffering was, what their problems was, learning to problematize it, learning to collectively seek some sort of action about it. So Bhanwari in 1985 became a Sathan in her village called Bhateri. Bhateri is an important village, and please mark it. A lot of women from all over the country and activists from all over the country come simply to visit her village. So that's the village Bhateri. It's only 50 to 60 kilometers from Jaipur. Coming back to where it started. So Bhanwari's work was to bring about awareness amongst women. She took up rape cases, she took up a lot of minimum wages cases, and then and was successful. And she used to hold these meetings. I remember going into Bhanwari's village even before 1992 September 22nd. So Bhanwari was the important point is now to come to September 20 to come to 1992. In the month of April, the government of Rajasthan decided, like every year it does, to have a campaign to stop child marriages, because lots of child marriages happen on a particular occasion called Akshaya Tritiya, Katij. So children get married, and we all know that what the visuals are. Of course, it has reduced incredibly. These marriages have reduced incredibly for the whole country. Also, it has reduced, and for Rajasthan since 1992. But at that time, it was really, really bad. So there was one of the dominant communities in a village. Their little baby, in one family, a 9-month-old boy was getting married to a 9-month-old girl. So the girl was in her village and the boy was in the neighborhood village. So when the government of Rajasthan sent directives to all its workers that you need to stop child marriages, Bhanwari also received it through her director and her supervisor that they have to stop marriages. So she identified a few marriages that were happening, and this particular one was identified because there was a 13-year-old girl and a 9-month-old baby girl getting married. So she went and started counseling them that please, that time age of marriage was 16. Please remember, age of marriage is 18. It happens later. So she said, you just have to wait for a few more years. And this child, who is completely, she says that the child was sitting in her own shit when she went, and in that mess. So she said, look at the baby, how can you do this? How can you do this marriage? Let's postpone it. So she very nicely dialogued. Her supervisor, whom we called Pracheta, the Sathan and the Pracheta, she also counseled. They went to the boy's house, who was 9 months old, and tried to counsel them, but nothing worked. So they sent, like everybody was sending, a list of people getting married, and that was not her job. She had done her counseling. That was the job of her supervisor to inform the seniors. And then, since the list went up to the collector passed it on to the SDM, who with the police on that particular Akshaya Tritiya in April went to the village. But as Bhanwari says, that wo to शादी दूसरी छत में कर दी और वो तो लाडू बाटी खा के चली गई police. As Bhanwari always says, that the marriage happened, it was performed on another terrace, and the police were nicely looked after, and they left. So the marriage happened. And so you can imagine today, we are talking of 31 years ago, how old that girl would be today. You can imagine, a story that starts 31 years ago with the intent of implementing the constitution. Bhanwari is still struggling for justice. So what happens? So that particular dominant community and that particular family decide to target Bhanwari, that she brought the police, which she didn't. She was never involved in bringing the police. It was the collector. And they then targeted her. And after a series of, harassment, of cutting the trees on her khet, on her farm, and coming to her house and trying to hit her husband. After that, one afternoon on 22nd September, Bhanwari had gone at 4 p.m. with her husband because the buffalo in the house was not having any fodder, had lost her baby. So they thought if she has green fodder, then she will probably eat it, to tempt her with green fodder. So they were in the Khet, they were on their farm, and Bhanwari is on the margins of being a marginal farmer. 1 bigha 8 biswas, less than 2 bighas of land. So Bhanwari was there, and with her husband, and there arrived 5 people: Ramkaran, Ramsukh, Gyarsa, and Badri. Gyarsa is the uncle, Badri is the nephew, and Ramkaran and Ramsukh is the family who had the baby. And they're all one family, along with Shravan Panda. 5 of them came to her farm, and then they caught hold of her husband. 2 people, Ramkaran and Shravan Panda, caught hold of her husband, and then 2 people caught hold of Bhanwari. Then first Gyarsa raped, and then Badri raped, and they left. And of course, her husband was brutally beaten up because he was trying to resist, and she also got lots of injuries. So the time was around 4 p.m. and Bhanwari, on her way back, met somebody who used to really, really honor her. So she went up to him. She said, they have gang raped me. He said, nobody in this village will help you. Go to your department. It was, by the time they reached home, it was 6 in the evening, and it was dark, getting dark, and Jaipur is a good 50-60 kilometers, no buses. So they sat up all night, didn't sleep, were in a dilemma what to do, what to tell the children. Bhanwari has 4 children. And then next morning, they left for Jaipur. They picked up the neighboring Sathin who went up to Jaipur. They stayed, they went 30 kilometers from their village to the police station called Bassi police station. The other Sathin went up to Jaipur to the office and brought a senior supervisor, a Pracheta. And then, so you can imagine, the rape happened sometime between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. And then from around 11:30, 12, they're sitting at the police station to lodge the FIR, even earlier. But no FIR gets lodged. They're harassed. They're asked, do you know what rape means? I mean, asking a woman, the deputy superintendent of police, do you know what rape means? And then after that, of course, they lodged the FIR finally, because that supervisor and Bhanwari insisted. But after that, the ordeal doesn't finish, because there has to be a rape medical exam. So for that, you have to do it at the the whatever available medical facility. So that facility had a male doctor. So Bhanwari refused. She said, I don't want to be examined by a male doctor. I don't want my rape exam done by him. So then she had to come to, they said, well, jurisdictional shift means going up to the local administration, and the administration sits in Jaipur. So they had to come to Jaipur. Now the whole thing had been sort of worked out by the community which raped the people of the community. The family was so powerful that when they reached the office, and the attitude of the administration, it is so important to know that the SDM told Bhanwari that, well, it's after 5 p.m. my office is closed, when we know an SDM is a 24-hour worker, and we know the medical examination after rape should be done immediately. And then they kept her all night in a Mahila police station. Her husband was made to sit outside. She was inside, where she was tortured and told she must not pursue with this case. But she was adamant. And of course, next morning also the drama happened. When they went back to the SDM and the police got the authority for her medical examination, the doctor looked at the paper and said, hey, this is age exam. They want me to do her age examination. But why? When she's saying she's been raped. Then they went back and got a second order. By then it was 5 p.m. Then the medical examination happened, and it, after in the whole rape protocol, after the medical examination, and of course the medical examination form is a third-rate form, where a woman who has delivered 4 children, it's written against her, not a virgin. I mean, you can imagine the the really stereotype forms. Anyways, now all that has undergone a shift. So then after that, she was taken to the Basi Thana, 20 kilometers from Jaipur, and there the police said, we have to seize your ghagra. Bhanwari dresses up, as you've seen, in a chunni, odani, and a ghagra. They said, we have to seize it. So, okay, she said, okay, give me another ghagra. They said, no, we are sorry. Why didn't you carry it with you? Imagine. And then her husband used to wear a small little pagri. He gave that to her, and she had to give the ghagara, which was not even sealed in front of her. Okay, so the packet is left open. Anyway, she walks 4 kilometers in that state. It's dark. It's 10 in the night. Luckily, they meet nobody. The streets are, because it's a village area, Basi was that time very, very rural. They walk 4 kilometers to the nearest Sathin's house and call. The husband goes in, calls the Sathin out and says, give us a ghagra. Only then can we come and spend the night with you. So this 52 hours delay in medical, this kind of torture, and this is how the Rajasthan police was working in 1992. And after that, we all know it, that under the CRPC, the woman's 161 statement needs to be taken. And next day or a couple of days later, when the police reached, the police calls Bhanwari to a chai ki thadi, where all men gather. It's at the corner of a village, and say, batao, tumhare saath kya hua? Tell what happened with you. And she said, but I can't talk in front of everybody. Come to my house. Of course, even that has undergone a change. The police has to go to a witness's house, or at least call her to the police station. So, and at the same time, we were trying to, talk to the villagers. Why are you silent? Because the discourse had started. Bhanwari jhooti hai. Bhanwari jhooti hai. That discourse had started. So we wanted to talk to the village, that why are you doing this? And why are you with the privilege? Because Bhanwari has served this village so much. And in that meeting that happened on the 30th of September, I still remember, the villagers kept saying that ये तो इतनी झूठी है कि गंगा जल छू लेगी तो वो खराब हो जाएगी, अपने बेटे पे हाथ रख लेगी, because they kept saying बेटे पे हाथ रख के बोले कि वो झूठी नहीं है, सच बोल रही है, गंगा जल हाथ में ले. And then at the same time they were commenting that she is like such a defiled woman and such a liar that even the ganga jal will spoil and her son, will die. So it's at that point we stopped the meeting, we walked out, we came back to the police and we said, please investigate properly. But then the Rajasthan police was not interested. Interestingly, in the Vidhan Sabha, a really distorted and horrible debate happens about this. If you read the papers, you'll be shocked. Against Bhanwari. Anyhow, the newspapers are also not reporting necessarily in her favor. However, the women's movement decided that they are going to fight it out, because Bhanwari has broken her silence. And this culture of denial is something that we will continuously fight. So then we took, on the 22nd of October, exactly a month after Bhanwari was gang raped, we took out a rally in Jaipur, where, of course, the police also hit us, because people were trying to storm into the secretariat and the gates are closed, and that's 1:44, a little before the secretariat. Anyways, but simultaneously that day on 22nd of October, we also moved the Supreme Court. And my story of Vishakha starts here. So 5 organizations, because the entire women's movement was horrified at what they could do, to a woman who's demanding justice. We moved the Supreme Court. The organizations are Vishakha Women's Education and Resource Center, Women's Rehabilitation Group, Rajasthan Voluntary Health Association, Kali for Women, and Jaguri. 5 organizations moved the Supreme Court and filed an application with several prayers. Transfer the case to CBI, and that is what that rally was also for. Transfer the case to CBI. We don't trust you. Take action against all officials who committed irregularities. The police, the SDM, and I mean the Thana police literally, stripped her, and the way they delayed everything. Third prayer was give her compensation. And the fourth prayer was bring about guidelines. The Supreme Court should give us guidelines for the prevention of sexual harassment at workplace. That was the last prayer. And we filed this case. So now we have 2 cases, one case in the Supreme Court and one the criminal case. Very quickly, I'll finish the journey of the criminal case. The charge sheet did not happen till 28th September 1993. It took us 1 year. Even in CBI, the CBI also was completely compromised. Till in the month of August, we went up to August 93. We were continuously trying to dialogue. We went up to Margaret Alba and we told her, she was the minister for CBI, and we said, you call yourself a feminist. You say you're for women's empowerment. What is happening? So then she got us to meet the DG CBI. When the DG CBI, I still remember, Bhanwari was sitting in the opposite end of an oblong table. We were at this, he was at this end, she was at the opposite end, and all of us were around. And he said, Tumhare saath kya hua? When Bhanwari presented a case, he said, why is the case not being charge sheeted? Her testimony is so clear. And then officers were sent. And then, of course, there was still a lot of struggle. Those officers were still not very keen. You know, the kind of patriarchy we had to fight. I'm talking of the 90s. You can imagine what must have happened, what happened to Mathura, what happened to Ramiza B, what happened to the others. We are talking of Bhanwari. Bhanwari is the third icon after Mathura and Ramiza. She stands heads and shoulders on their journeys, I mean, above their shoulders. So then the charge sheet happens, but then don't think the arrest happened. The police is not interested in arresting. It took 6 months. When the court, the CBI court said, if you're not going to make them surrender, then we're going to auction the property. And they were very, very rich people. They had huge farm. And therefore, they came, they were jailed for about 1.5 years. The trial started and concluded on 15th November 1975. And in this period, about 3 judges changed. We had a very strong prosecution case, nevertheless. They were all acquitted, all the 5 were acquitted on grounds of caste, on grounds of age. I mean, a sociology of rape was constructed. Since one of the rape accused, Gyarsa, was old. They said old men don't rape. What was his age? Must have been around 50. Old men don't rape. Uncle and nephew don't get together and rape. An intercaste gang doesn't happen. And rape is unheard of in the village. And rape of older women is completely unheard. And gang rape, never heard. These are the arguments of the defense, which were carried forward, and more rubbish was in it. Anyways, we would not have taken that silently. We, of course, protested and took out a huge rally that it is the judgment of the Sessions Court which is false and not Bhanwari. Bhanwari is absolutely truthful and she should be given justice. We took out a huge rally. There was a counter rally which said Bhanwari is jhuti. Bhanwari jhuti hai. Bhanwari is a liar. They took out a counter rally, and it was an obnoxious rally because they called from the podium that Bhanwari should actually be hanged, for being a liar and defaming people. Anyways, in the meanwhile, obviously, we moved in appeal. And that appeal went in the month of January. The appeal was filed January. We are now in 96 because now at 95, the judgment comes. And that appeal that went in 96 January came up for hearing, and the judge said, put it in due course. What does that mean? Due course means you're in the queue. Now, it is 6 years, 27 years since the appeal was filed, and the matter has not yet come up for hearing. I remember when we check, and they were still taking to 19. Her appeal is 96. They were still somewhere in 2004 or 5 appeals. You know it. We're all in a queue in the High Court. We moved applications twice, so early hearing. Once they said no, and once they dismissed it quite badly. So they said no. Everybody is in a queue. There are other women. So that is the story of the criminal case where Bhanwari is awaiting justice from the High Court. Okay. And of the 5, 4 accused have died. Yarsa Gujar, Ramkaran Gujar, Ramsukh Gujar, and Shravan Panda. All have died. Badri Gujar, the only accused, is alive. Bhanwari has lost a husband in the meanwhile in 2020, who was a most solid supporter. He is also gone. You can see what these journeys do. So that today is not the matter of discussion. Let me come back to Vishaka. So we had filed this PIL. The matter came up in the Supreme Court, and I would like to acknowledge our lawyers and our researchers who drafted it. So Nana Kapoor, the advocate, the researcher advocate, who helped all of us collectively conceptualize. See, I come from the feminist movement, where we sit and collectively brainstorm, collectively arrive at issues. So this PIL had been conceived in that fashion, and it proceeded in the Supreme Court also collectively. And our lawyers initially were Soli Sorabji, senior counsel, and then Fali Nariman, and the advocate on record was Meenakshi Arora, and with Nana Kapoor was Jasjit Purewal. They later, both of them, set up Sakshi. Now, in the court, when the matter finally came up for hearing, the court found that prayer by prayer had become infructuous, and they said, let this come to us at a later stage. So the court straight away went to the prayer on formulation of guidelines against sexual harassment at workplace. And brilliant work done by the court. They firstly, because CEDAW had just been ratified, the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which was passed by the UN in 1979, was finally ratified in the Parliament in 92. It took so many years for the ratification to happen. So using international tools and using our, so international law and national law together got us this wonderful judgment where the 2 judges, Justice J.S. Verma and Sujata Manohar, both were the judges who gave us that judgment. And that is why, please remember, the Justice J.S. Verma report doesn't come out of nowhere. And let us tell you that Justice J.S. Verma was also the Rajasthan High Court Chief Justice in the 80s. So he knew Rajasthan very well. He knew what happens, and women, the government wants women to be empowered, and if women are not protected, and therefore the first thing that is important for the judgment, there are many things in it, but I'll just highlight 2 or 3 things. One of the most important things of judgment is that it put it in the framework of human rights abuse, that to not have a sexual harassment free workspace is a violation of my human rights, which means that, and we are also approaching 75 years of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights on the 10th of December. So it's very important to remember that India brought it into the framework of human rights abuse in 19 sexual harassment way back in 97 when the judgment came. The judgment came on 14th of August 1997. So the first part is bringing it into the it's a violation of my human rights, making my workspace for my full expression as a human being inalienable, that I need a sexual harassment free workspace. Secondly, they went into the definition. I mean, the fact that they conceded that hota hai, sexual harassment hota hai in workspaces, I mean, that was the biggest move, because all around the discourse was nahi hota hai. This doesn't happen. Sexual harassment does not happen. Second is that they did some brilliant work with definitions, where we all know it, that we did have in criminal law section 354 and you did have 376. So outraging a woman's modesty and all that you have, which of course after Nirbhaya has undergone a lot of changes. We have 351A, B, and so on and so forth. So then they, in their definitions, gave us 4 points where they said any unwelcome advance. The important word is unwelcome. Somebody reaches out to me in a particular way, and I may not disagree. I may have a consensus, that okay, but any unwelcome advance, which is verbal, which could be non-verbal, which could be at that point of time also, you had email, so that could be, electronically, and that could be physical, of course. So and then went deeper into these definitions. So first was the definitional framework that we got. Can you just get them to stop outside? And secondly, we got a mechanism. You see, you may get a law, but if you don't get a mechanism, it makes no sense. What was the mechanism? Since it was a civil law, so the mechanism was in-house. The mechanism was where you were working, where you had to have a complaints committee. Now, please remember, we gave them the draft and they worked on it, and that's what happens. The Supreme Court always asks the petitioner and also asks the government to give a draft. So we gave them this draft, and that we should have a complaints committee came through our deliberations. Don't think that was the government of India and the government of Rajasthan councils giving that. We gave them that there should be a complaints committee. Have whom you want to. It should be an odd number, and have whom you want to. But there should be an NGO independent member. The independent member was very, very important, because we know that workplaces can be so hostile, and the entire, staff and others can be extremely hostile. So you must have independent members, at least one. You could have even 2 or 3. And that was a very, very important thing. And it didn't stop there, because Justice Verma and Sujata Manohar realized when we told them that, please remember, we are not an application-based society, that you keep giving applications. Women will just keep bearing it and bearing it and bearing it. So we have to work both with women and with men. So this committee, which no committees do today, I'm sorry to say, this committee was supposed to go to regularly to that office space, talk with unions. It's written there, about the kind of conduct they should keep, talk with women and explain to them that, they can speak out. So I've given you 3 sets of salient features about Vishaka judgment, locating it as human rights abuse, the definition, the committee, and the work of the committee is not just to adjudicate the applications that come to them, but also, and even in that, the procedure given. So I close here in the sense that 97 August is a marker for all of us women and this country, where there was a recognition that sexual harassment in the workplace exists. And today, 26 years later, when we are sort of celebrating 10 years of the law, it's very important to remember the history of Vishakha. Of course, Vishakha was not the only case. Post Vishakha, there's the Apparel Promotion Export Council case, and Medha Kotwal Lele went to further bring in some insights into Vishakha which were missing. And of course, that journey is 13 years, 16 years. We only get the law in 2013, post Nirbhaya, when Justice Verma committee sat with all of us, with series of people, and evaluated that what are the other instruments. Do we need legal instruments? Do we need other kinds of amendments? While the criminal law amendment happened and the entire rape law and the law on sexual harassment underwent a change, at the same time, we also got the sexual harassment of women at workplace law. It's called prohibition, prevention, and redressal of sexual harassment of women. Please remember that. It is a gendered law. Women at the workplace. And 2013. And then, of course, the law was passed in April, and then nothing happened. The rules came on December 9th, and it came into force. There has to be a Gazette notification that it has to come into force. So it came into force on December 9th. And the law, of course, is more detail. I'm sure we'll talk about it. So I've taken a lot of your time to give you the whole history of what this journey was.
Thank you so much, Kavita. Actually, I just want to say that, we whenever we conduct workshops to sensitize people about sexual harassment at the workplace, and we always start with, Bhavi Devi's, tragic journey and the Vishaka judgment. And even though we have recounted it numerous times during the course of workshops and conversations, it is still so traumatic to hear even now. I think more than 31 years later, even now, as you were recounting what happened to her, I think the sense of despair, I could feel it now, even though we are talking about an incident that happened.
आपका 31 साल का दुख, इतना सब कुछ मिला औरतों को, लेकिन 31 साल का दुख अभी भी आपके चेहरे पे दिखता है. But Bhanwari has been very brave. She has done so much work in her village. I cannot tell you. And not just a village. She is like someone who has become the person to go if you want justice in an area of 100-150 kilometers from Bharatpur. She lives on the eastern side of Rajasthan. So from Bharatpur people have come. मैं बता रही हूँ कि भरतपुर से भी लोग आते हैं, करौली से भी लोग, from far off districts. बहुत ज़्यादा. हाँ, lots of people come to her. She says बहुत ज़्यादा लोग आज भी आते हैं. तो Bhanwari चेहरे तो नर्सी बिल्कुल बगड़ जाओ. मेरे जैसे, we were a collective. See, I'm today only sitting as a spokesperson as part of a collective. So we were a huge collective that worked on this. As I told you, it was the women's movement. So she's saying that when I had, shares like Kavita, so we were many shares. She was the big shareni, and we were behind her.
No, she's definitely an icon and an inspiration. So there's no two ways about it.
आपके लिए बोल रहे हैं कि आप बहुत बड़ी प्रेरणा है हमारे लिए. सबके पाछे छु मैं, अकेली को नहीं. I'm not alone.
I'm not alone. Yeah.
I'm with everybody because there are so many people with me. So I'm not.
So Kavita, and we will in about 5 minutes. I think we will we would love to hear a little bit more from Bhavi Devi ji also. But I have a couple of questions for you, primarily on the how all of you sort of came up with the in-house mechanism. It's a very, very unique. I mean, today when we look at it, it's become part of, especially in corporate life, right? Every company, every organization with more than 10 employees must have an internal committee. It's non-negotiable, and today in a lot of organizations, the committee has a fair bit of credibility, standing. People understand that the committee has a job to do, and so on and so forth. But a couple of decades ago, I mean, how did how did this concept of an in-house mechanism come into being? I mean, what was the sort of was it inspired by some model you've seen somewhere else, or just by looking at what is we'd love to hear the story behind that, because today I think this is really an in-house committee with the backing of a statute is a very powerful body. And I think probably globally also we don't have anything like this, right?
तो ये कह रहे
So
जो
where did this come from?
विशाखा फैसला आया था ना, इसमें इतनी समितियां में जो अगला सवाल पूछ रहे हैं, पहले तो पूछा आपकी पूरी कहानी और अभी तक, और अब पूछ रहे हैं कि ये जो समितियां बनी विशाखा की शिकायत समितियां, ये दिमाग में हमारे कैसे आया, तो मैं वो कहानी बता रही हूँ. So let me tell you, this was a collective process, and let's remember that we had people like Nana Kapoor, Jasjeet Purewal, Meenakshi Arora, and our senior councils, and all of us. When I say all of us, we were a huge movement. I just cannot tell you the numbers we used to be, So the deliberation consisted of access. Access was number one, because the Thana, number one, we felt that criminal law we have, and we have seen the state of the Thana. Till Thane ko theek nahi karenge. Actually, then the women's movement of Rajasthan works and harder ki Thane ko kaise theek kare. That's let's leave it for another story, another day, another story. So we said the Thanas are inaccessible and we're not going to get justice. Can there be something which is not just more accessible, dialogic? Somewhere where a woman can be heard. And therefore, let's also look at the limitations of Vishakha. And therefore, the law, the PoSH law that came in 2013 has tried to cover up some of the limitations. So we looked at, obviously, when we talk of a committee in-house, we are looking at a very structured employment. Bhanwari was part of, also, she was a honorarium paid Sathan. She's retired from the program. She retired 2 years ago from that program. An honorarium paid Sathan, she used to get 200 rupees only. And by the time she retired, 3,500 mil rahe the. Then when she retired, by then it was only 3,500. Okay, so the most important worker is an honorary worker. And they had a whole structure, of the government and non-government. This was a partnership program, very uniquely thought in the 80s. We talk of partnerships today, but that was thought through in the 80s. So, so that time we realized that even the last person must have access to that space. There should be a mechanism where she can go. So we were thinking of a lot of, remember, the 73rd and 74th Amendment also had happened by 1993, 94, and then by 95, all our state laws. In fact, our election, Rajasthan election, had happened in January, and this huge number of women who came. We said, even they will need access, and nurses and everybody. So we realized that let's have an in-house space with an appeal mechanism. So you can always go in for appeals, and that is how it was conceived, that if it becomes part of the conduct rules of institutions, where many things are said about the conduct, and there are, punishments in accordance. So let this come in the conduct rules. Let it become integral to the whole system, and we know that it will take time for organizations to actually internalize it. But let's start. And we didn't know that time that it would be very difficult. Like the challenges of posts from universities. At the universities, we all know the relationship between guides. When we look at PhD scholars, they are in great duress because the guides can, their PhD guide can also, do all kinds of, they can be doing a lot of things in distress. And we as women's organizations also working in the university, the Rajasthan University Women's Association, I mean, many such things. So one of the first challenges was from MS University Baroda, where the students demanded, the PhD scholars and students demanded, we want a committee for ourselves. They said, no, this is only for those who work. And that is why in the PoSH law, you have very clearly who is an employee. The employee can be an intern. The employee is a paid or unpaid, it doesn't matter, a probationer. We spelt it out in the PoSH law. So, so what I'm trying to say is that access was one of the reasons, a space where a woman could be heard was one of the reasons. And the independent member made us go ahead for these committees, number one. Number two, the fact that it was argued, I mean, we also tried to bring in workshops, because we knew that there is such a silence. I mean, laws will not work if people don't use it. So have I is the internet, is it fine? Am I audible?
You're audible and visible, all working good, Kavita. Please go ahead.
Okay.
All good.
Okay, because there was an unstable connection line that came.
Yeah, but don't worry.
And so this other thing, number one, as you asked me, was a complaint. But the other thing was also very important, which I think our committees don't do today, is they should do regular workshops. You have to continuously build awareness. Let me tell you, I'm 61 years old. I have been in the movement since I was very young, since I was in school, college, and university, and my entire work life. Let me tell you, the forms of sexual violence have really changed. We have to understand, if I don't sit, like I'm sitting just now with 24 young people, and there are boys and young women and young men, we have to ask them, what is it that disturbs them? What is it that is acceptable? See, we are living in a time which is very different, where women's question of sexuality also is now, looked at differently in the public sphere. In the 90s, it was very different. So how is it that the women would like to understand what is an unwelcome advance? So we have to continuously do workshops and also upgrade. Now, that is something that committees never do. They've become stilted committees that just sit, although it's a very good idea, and they can even now, become live committees if they're regularly interacting. But it's a struggle even with the committees. While it's a fantastic idea, please remember, these committees may not necessarily hear the woman, may not necessarily have a consensus, even if there is evidence, to go against the respondent. The respondent may be a great professor. And that is why when the Me Too movement happened in 2017, we had so many young women come out from in the academia, and led by Raya Sarkar and her famous list, saying that damn these committees. We've gone through that process. Damn these committees. We're going to name and shame, because these committees are not delivering. Yes, the committee, and that time it was 5 years of the law, when these Me Too's, 2017, 2018, 2019, we continuously had a whole Me Too movement. Yet I feel we can work a lot with the committees. We can still do them if they make themselves vibrant. If it becomes like a regular, we even went through trainings. We try to look at when workers are trained, how is it? And I would like to bring one dimension of the law, which is very, very important. The limitation of Vishakha was that most women are in the informal sector. Where do informal sector women go if they're sexually harassed? So in the law, we brought in the local complaints committee. Now it is, again, we are looking at 10 years of the law, Antony. How many poor women, domestic workers, construction workers, and other workers have accessed these committees? Though it's written that, committees will come from the blocks. I mean, members will come from the block so that there is an awareness. How many women have access? I know these committees are working. I know, at least in my city, Jaipur, there's a really eminent person who was part of making of Vishakha. She was the woman who signed as Women's Rehabilitation Group, Renuka Pamecha. I mean, we couldn't have a better person, eminent person than her. But how much awareness is about local complaints committee? Secondly, the local complaints committee is very important. In formal employment, if the boss is my sexual harasser, Section 5 of the law says that I go to the local complaints committee because I may not get a fair hearing. Okay. So, so the expansion of the law for informal workers and in particular the domestic workers, and we owe it to the National Advisory Council of the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, who had a National Advisory Council, who brought in the domestic worker. I cannot tell you, there was so much of argument against it, that are you going to try to bring, like whenever marital rape is talked about, they say, oh, so you're going to try to bring the police into the bedroom. Okay. I mean, women must not have a choice in the bedroom. And here it was, are we going to get, households being dragged into these committees? But I must say that there was a massive movement by all domestic workers union that we want this law, and they are using it. They're the only ones perhaps who are using it. They went to the then Labor Minister Oscar Fernandez and they said, this is part of our safe space, is not for us, because the whole movement of Bhanwari, Devi and Vishakha was to create safe spaces for employment. If Bhanwari had had a safe space, this today, 31 years later, she wouldn't have been sitting. So our domestic workers who are who are at highest risk, because you have to go house to house, room to room. You don't know when you open the door in what state of undress the men are in, and those are the kinds of cases we are working with. What they try to show them on their laptops, and we've tried to see that where the woman doesn't want an FIR, they come to the complaints committee.
I think that's been the sort of significant change that's come about. It's actually a mechanism that is just not on paper. It's definitely been used, and we were recently discussing this, Kavita, as well. The fact that while the PoSH law is popularly known in the corporate world because of the impact it has made and because of the relief it has given to women employed in the corporate sector, but it's wonderful to hear that it is also making an impact for the sort of the unorganized sector as well, where these kind of incidents are probably more rampant than what has happened in the corporate sector. So it's good to hear that it's working at both places. Just one question. Yeah, Kavita, go ahead, please.
Yeah. No, I just want to talk of the law, one more dimension of the law, the new law, the PoSH law. Vishakha continues to be, I mean, that law, please, I mean, our viewers must know that no judgment is withdrawn. So Vishakha continues to be, okay. So you can always draw from Vishakha. And that is something we draw, and I would like all our viewers to know, and our corporate people who are at the helm of affairs to know. Any inquiry that happens must never be with just the committee of the people of that employment. It should always have an independent member. The independent member should become a non-negotiable, number one. I want to talk of part 3 of the law. Part 1 is committees. Part 2 is how to file a complaint. Then what are the punishments? The committees are giving us recommendation. The committee gives the boss a recommendation. So the committee must finish their work. They can extend it maximum. Like it takes it. They must finish their work in 60 days, and in 60 days, then in 10 days they must give the copy, and then the administrative head
90 days,
must
Kavita,
try to implement everything in 60 days.
It's 90 days.
90 plus 60.
90 plus 10. 90 plus 10. You have to complete the inquiry. Employer has 60 days
10
to
is
execute the order.
Completing it. 10 is 60 days. Yeah, employer I was talking. 90 is the committee. 10, 6, within 6 months, you must give your complaint, but you can also extend it if there is a reason. And then within 90 days, the inquiry must be done. Within 10 days, all the process of handing over the report to the administrative head, and the administrative head must take 60 days to implement it.
That's right.
And if you almost look at it, it can take a year. If I haven't gone in the first 6 months and I extend it, it can take a full year. What I want to say is part 4 of the law, which is monitoring and regulation. So this law is monitored by the Department of Women and Child in every state and overseen by the Union Department of Women and Child. They are supposed to check that every organization, whether it is a university or whether it is a law office like yours or a PUCL, a citizens organization, we are unregistered, but we have a committee. And that committee members' names and phone numbers are pasted on the door. Whoever enters can know if there is an issue. The regulatory body, which is Women and Child, never does anything. I have never seen them. I don't know whether you give an annual report, Antony, but we are all supposed to give an annual report.
Very much. Very much.
And the annual report also has a format. The number of, which organization gives? Let's do an audit. Let's do an audit in 10 years and tell ourselves how many organizations, how many universities did it, how many corporate houses did it, how many law firms did it. Second, if you don't have a committee, you have to pay 50,000 rupees. You can be punished. The first time you are told and you're charged 50,000, you still don't make a committee, another 50,000. And then your registration can be cancelled.
You could lose your license to carry out the business.
How many registrations have been cancelled?
True.
How many times? Yeah. How many regulations have actually, how many times the regulatory body has reached people, summoned people? Let me tell you, this law is also a low priority within the regulatory framework. So we have to activate that. We have to keep going to them and asking under RTI, give us tell us the data of the annual report that they can give us. The state women's commissions are supposed to be regulating it. Are the state women's commissions doing it? Are they inquiring about it? And of course, we need to, in the 10th year, not just ensure this regulation, we also have to look what were the action taken recommendations, because there's also community work. There's also, you could be giving community work, which women get very upset. That nahi bhai, kuch aur bhi hona chahiye. You can indict, you can do whatever. Stop the increments, transfer the person or whatever. So I just feel that 10 years is the time when we must do solid research, solid studies to actually know different sectors. How have they responded? How has the academia responded? How has the corporate world responded? How have the NGOs? Let me tell you, the NGOs can be very cussed and say, hum to sab bhai hain, hum bhai behan hain, hum to sab. We went to newspaper offices to get Vishakha implemented. I remember the editor-in-chief sat with us and said, Pura parivar hai, we are one family. Nothing happens. And let's talk about the judiciary, from where this law came. How many years did it take for the judiciary to implement it? We had Justice Ganguly's case. Then there were more cases, Justice Swankar and others. How many years it took? And even today, we had yet another case of Justice Gogoi, where an employee had challenged it. So there was a committee set up. We all know about it. There was no Vishakha. The judges will look after themselves. They will not have an independent member. Why? It's an administrative task. When your sewage is not working, you call a specialist, the plumber. Call the specialists into your committee. So what? Amend your rules. Why are you scared of independent women into your committee? You know, I mean, and we know this is such a hierarchical space. In hierarchical spaces, will junior judges, if the Chief Justice is charged, will junior judges make a point against him? A retired judge, they could. That in-house committee did give a report, and everybody should read that report about Justice Ashok Ganguly. So all I would like to say that there is a lot of work that needs to be done. We have to move sector by sector. Look at NREJ. The NREJ workspaces has the largest number of women. The largest employment is by NREJ, MGNREJ. Who has worked on the safe spaces within work sites and told women the law? So there's a lot that needs to be done. I think I close here, and I think now we need to talk with Bhanwari.
Yes. Thank you, Kavita. Thank you so much. And I think you've raised some very valid points. Why the battle is definitely not over by any means. I think it's a long way to go. Lots of I think much more needs to be done in the area of creating safe workspaces for women, particularly for women. I have a couple of questions, but I'm just going to first hold off because I would like to sort of address Bhanwari Devi ji. Bhanwari Devi ji, आप आज हमारे प्रोग्राम पे आए हैं, हम बहुत आभारी हैं। आज सुप्रीम कोर्ट के विशाखा जजमेंट के करीब 26 साल हो गए, इस कानून के 10 साल हो गए। ये बदलाव लाने में आपका बहुत बड़ा हाथ था, और आप इस देश में करोड़ों महिलाओं के लिए प्रेरणा है, वो तो आप जानते ही होंगे कि वो आप अपने हक के लिए लड़े, और तब तक लड़े जब तक बदलाव ना आए। तो आपको प्रोग्राम पे आने के लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। हम आपसे बस एक दो सवाल करना चाहते हैं कि सबसे पहले कि आप अपने ऑडियंस, ये जो आज आपके साथ हैं, जुड़े हुए हैं आपके साथ, कि आप आज के युवा को क्या सलाह देना चाहेंगे कि देश को अगर बदलना है तो कैसे बदलाव लाएं, और क्या-क्या हम अभी कर सकते हैं कि और भी हम बदलाव लाएं इस देश में, खासकर महिलाओं के राइट्स के लिए, हक के लिए।
समझ में आया ना? आप क्या संदेश देना चाहती हो?
संदेश तो यही है, अब पूरी पब्लिक से जो लड़े, चुप न बैठे, मैं मर भी जाऊं तो भी। और संदेश यही है कि न्याय ले सरकार से हटो, तरह हटो ही मतो। और पूरा हमारा बच्चा ने, हमारी लड़कियां ने, हमारे माई बहन ने, सबने न्याय मिलना चाहिए। और ये कानून से और बनना चाहिए, विशाखा लैंड बनी चाहिए। अब सब बच्चा ने चने जे पढ़ लिख रिया थे, होशियार है रिया थे। मैं ट्रेनिंग देवे गई थी ना, जब की तो चने जे ये की लड़की कौन पढ़े थी, और आज हमारी कोल्ले दा ठोकर भरी थी। मैं पर्सन उठाया मेरे पास,
तो मैं इसको बता दो। So she's saying 2-3 things. Number one, even if I die, the struggle for my justice should go on. And her second point is that nobody must sit back if there is injustice. We must fight till the end. सरकार से न्याय लेकर रहना है. We must take justice. Justice is not going to come to you. You have to take justice. And that is a message she wants to give all the young women, the young boys, the women, and women older than her, that we must never sit back and take justice. And the third thing that she's trying to say, that when she started out in her village in 1985, hardly any girls went to school. And today, every girl, not just in her village, but all around, are going and studying. And that is the way that change is going to happen. और
हमारी तरफ से बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
कुछ और बताना चाहते हो? कुछ और
बतावा यही थे भाई, माने न्याय ले मिले, माने सब लड़कियां ने लड़का ने, और पढ़ लिख रही थे यहाँ कहता है जे काई कानून बनना चाहिए, चाहे यानी काई ये मिले थे ना आरक्षण, ये सब लड़कियां ने लड़का ने
मिलना चाहिए,
रहना चाहिए। तो कोड़ भटकता डोले से पीछे पड़ा, कोड़ो पढ़ लिखा।
So the right to work is Bhanwari's next that सबको काम मिलना चाहिए, सबको रोजगार मिलना चाहिए, the right to work, because once, now that there's so much of education, where do they go? You know, so that's one of the things. And of course, she has once again, reiterated that someday I must get justice. And
of course,
she's looking up to all of us to see that.
I think if there is, I think that is the biggest tragedy of what has happened, is the fact that she is yet to receive justice, and it's a telling commentary on the current legal system, that nobody is able to still give her justice, even though the facts of the case are so well known, but it also means that there are so many like her in the queue, as they call it, awaiting justice, and. It's true what they say, that justice delayed is justice denied in many senses. So
कह रहे हैं कि जब न्याय की इतनी देरी हो जाती है तो वो न्याय का मतलब क्या रहता है?
कहीं भी मतलब हो, चाहे मत हो, चाहे बरसाएं बीत जाओ, चाहे उम्र ही गुजर जाओ, पर न्याय ले छोड़ो, हमारा मतलब क्या है?
She said, let time pass, but I am going to take justice. And
I think they're very inspiring words, and I think, at least speaking for myself, I can understand a lot of what she's saying, even though I don't speak the language. But it's more than the words. It's a passion that is shining through. So very, very
जिस तरीके
inspirational.
से अपनी बात रखते हो, पूरी बात समझ में आ जाती है, हमें अंग्रेजी में भी करने की जरूरत नहीं है, वो ये बोल रहे हैं.
सही से तो मैं कहीं अंग्रेजी बोलूं तो मैं तो सादा भाषा में बोलूं तो न्याय ले रखे, और यहाँ का बारे में बच्चान का बारे में कानून बने जो थोड़ा बहुत रोजगार मिले
सबको,
भटकता
रोजगार सबको मिलना चाहिए.
मतलब काम का अधिकार सबको मिले, जैसे पढ़ाई का अधिकार मिला है वैसे काम का अधिकार.
पढ़ाई का बारे में पूरा घर का जोर लगा दिया, पूरा ये लगा दिया, और फिर भटकता डोल जब यहाँ काम को कोई फिर मंजूरी, बस छोटी मोटी नौकरी है, पर है या न बच्चा ने, लड़कियां ने, सब ने.
So this is the cry from the villages of Rajasthan. And I think it's everywhere.
Everywhere. Villages everywhere across India.
It's urban also, it's rural also. जो आप बात बोल रही हो पूरी देश की बात है कि रोजगार मिलना चाहिए,
पूरा देश की. मैं कहीं एक बच्चा के ताई थोड़ी करी थी, एक लड़की के ताई थोड़ी करी, पूरा पब्लिक देश से अपना जीने तक.
और पर उसमें सुरक्षित जगह हो, वहां यौनिक हिंसा ना हो. So safe spaces, employment along with safe spaces, education along with safe spaces. Those are some of the things.
I think
if there are any questions,
we'll take questions now.
सवाल ले लेते हैं. हाँ, if there are any questions, then
I'm just opening up the chat. People are actually touched by and inspired by Bhanwari Devi ji and her story and the way she's narrated it. So that's there. Please let her know that. That she's continuing to inspire lots of people.
बहुत ही कहा है कि आप इतनी बड़ी प्रेरणा स्रोत हो, जो आपने बात रखी वो दिल को छू गई, और बहुत आपको धन्यवाद देते हैं. और जो अन्याय आपके साथ हुआ उससे एक साथी लिख रहे हैं कि उनके अंदर खून खौल रहा है, कितना अन्याय क्यों आपके साथ हुआ. फिर कुछ सवाल है. Will you take the question?
I'll take the question. One question that's coming, and while it's primarily for you, Kavita, but I think even Bhanwari Devi ji will also have a view on this, which is we always face a question: why is this law only for women and why not for men? What is your take on this question?
तो भंवरी, एक सवाल आया है कि हम औरतों के यौनिक हिंसा की बात करते, पुरुषों की क्यों नहीं बात करते?
पुरुषाई कर रही है ना भी, लड़का भी लागना चाहिए, जो बढ़िया नौकरी.
नहीं, नौकरी नहीं, विशाखा, जो यौनिक हिंसा, नौकरी की बात नहीं, जो हिंसा होती है, जो यौनिक हिंसा होती है, वो पुरुषों कह रहे हमारे लिए भी कानून बने, हमारे साथ भी होती है.
कानून था कहीं बने, बताओ. कानून तो थे खुद गलत बैठे.
She's saying, why do you need a law? You're the one who's the violator. Why do you need a law? I don't think I need to say anything, but we can talk of safe spaces. POCSO recognized that young boys were as vulnerable, and brought in a law to protect young boys from sexual offenses. So I think there is a recognition, but that men are the violators. That if men start accepting women's no, if they know how to not be dominating, they know if they're willing to give that little space to the women, the woman, that she has said,
boundaries have to be respected. Consent
yes,
is critical.
absolutely.
If
And our
those
Indian
rules,
men need to be trained for that. Our Indian men, really, our homes need to train up, our schools need to train up that mindset much more, because that mindset, then what happens, the kind of misogyny that happens, and the workspaces get toxic then. So
agreed. No, I think that is very, very true, and that has been and actually, Kavita, just want to address one point that you made with respect to how the law is being implemented. We now work with more than 1,000 organizations across the country, and I can tell you that a lot of them take implementation and compliance with the PoSH law very seriously.
very nice.
They file annual returns,
Big
annual
hand.
reports, all of that. And of course, it is it
वो
still is
कह रहे
not.
हैं आप बहुत सारी संस्थाओं के साथ काम करते हैं देश भर में, और वो विशाखा को सही से लागू कर रहे हैं, और कानून को भी लागू कर रहे हैं, और रिपोर्ट बना के सरकार को भी देते हैं.
हाँ, बहुत खुशी की बात हमारी ओड़ी. धन्यवाद था ना, बहुत बहुत
ज्यादा. From her side also, thanks for sharing.
बहुत जोर लगाओ, ताकत जे आप
हम पूरी कोशिश कर रहे हैं भावरी जी.
बच्चा सही लैंड पे नशा लगा ना, तो वहां कहता है भी कानून.
Yeah. Then
so that was that. The other question is again, we have another 2-3 comments. I got goosebumps when I heard a story and very inspired by her passion and confidence. Another comment, Bhavani Devi is an inspiration to everyone. She's epitome of determination and perseverance. I think both are very critical words, determination, perseverance, because without that, we would not have got where we are today. One more question, I think, Kavita, for you before we, I know you have a hard stop at 12, so we'll try and wrap up 5 minutes before. Is there any provision that you think should be added to this law, the PoSH law, to ensure that every organization establishes an IC? Many small corporate offices do not follow the PoSH law. And I think this comes back to the same question, the comment that you made earlier, that are law firms implementing it, are CA firms implementing it, are other NGOs, smaller organizations, is it really being implemented in? I think here, more than the law, it should be implementation of the law. The law has enough teeth. It's the government that needs to implement it, but I'm not going to answer on your behalf.
Yeah.
Please,
See,
what do you think?
Yes, I can think of a lot of amendments, but the time is just now to ensure that on the ground, people create it for themselves, and people work with it, engage with it. And like local complaints committee, I think all of us need to focus on local complaints committees in our cities. We just go up to our collectorates and ask the collector, because he's in charge and the law. He may make an additional collector chairperson, and the district women and child agency, the whoever is head of that district women and child agency is generally the member secretary. And generally we have women and child right up to the district level, and just women also. We don't, the child has been separated a long time ago, child separately, women, or could be together, whatever. And in some places, it is still under social welfare agencies. In some states, whatever be the agency, the member secretary is from that person who's in charge. We must go up to them and ask, please tell us.
Yes.
Who are the members? Have you advertised about it?
Yes.
What kinds of cases come to you? How much time does it take? How many women have actually got justice? Those kinds of questions. So we need a focus on local complaints committee a lot, and we need to activate our committee members to actually begin dialoguing with the staff.
Agreed. And
I just want to add one more thing.
Yes, of course.
Such a law also doesn't look at just workspaces within 4 walls. Even if I'm sitting on the street, we have already said it, I'm an informal worker, but also during transportation. Please remember, I'm going with my senior lawyer in a car. I know of cases. I know of a girl, a very, very senior lawyer, I cannot name him in this, who was harassing her. She actually, at the first red light, she leapt out. So even in transportation, if harassment happened, it comes under the workspace space. So the workspace is a continuum. The workspace is not just, the office. The workspace, like for a lawyer's office, it can the chamber in the court itself, while traveling, the chamber in the house, the chamber at another independent place. So it's a continuum. The workplace shifts with the kind of work you're doing, and of course, both Vishakha and PoSH have the third party reference.
Yes.
I think that's very important. I mean, I am in the PUCL. I have so many interns. I send them for a theater workshop, and sexual harassment happens there. It happened. We send them for to understand Black tragedy and to do theater in that way. And the director was sexually harassing one of the girls. Late in the night, he was messaging and doing this. We took it up very seriously, and we called the director, and whatever the girl wanted. So third party engagement with third party issues. I know of people saying, "Arey, ye humko kya lena dena? Ye hamare we have nothing to do with it. This man came for his own little work." So we have to actually see that the law is implemented in its totality.
Yes.
Antony, one of my final points would be, it will be really good if district to district, state to state, some sort of evaluation is done. Earlier when we used to have the planning commission,
yes,
and our universities did a lot of this ground research. I in fact told our Center for Women's Studies, as part of 10 years of the PoSH law, just 2 days ago, I was in another meeting. I told them, I said, Center for Women's Studies, all of you step out, go and evaluate it in other universities, in colleges, in schools, do it within academia if you want to, but do it overall. So we really need to put together a status report, because the workplace is so infinite. Look at the hospitality industry. I'm sure you work with them, but what's happening in smaller cities? Today, I get off a very, very small little town like Beam. Hotels have come up. What's happening there? And they're on the counter. So what's happening within various formal and informal employment? I think we have to work with trade unions. We need to build our relationship with trade unions, with associations, with informal networks, with the feminist movement. Then we will actually see, because there was this question that, has it changed societal attitudes or something? I think you were still coming to it.
I was coming to it. Actually, I had another question, Kavita, before we let you go, which is something very interesting. A lot of people constantly ask us. The law prescribes a 3-year term for members on the committee.
Yeah.
What is your take? Do you believe that committee members should step off after 3 years? And if so, why? If not, why?
I think 3 years is an okay time. Vested interest develops always. Things change. I become complacent. 3 years is a good time, but you can always repeat it. Like for us, PUCL is not a structured organization. It's a citizens organization. So we have the most wonderful 5 people, and we keep renewing them. We also take out a small notice, and we also have male members in it, because a lot of young men come to us. I think it's a good idea to review. And if there are complaints in between where women feel that one particular member is not acting fairly, then also, the person should give in writing. See, we keep telling people that breaking the silence means giving in writing. Otherwise, merely shouting about it doesn't make a difference. So I think we need to evaluate our own the role and the fairness of our members also. Even that evaluation
needs to be constantly done. That evaluation.
Evaluation.
And which is the reason why the 3-year term makes sense, actually.
I go with it. I would go with it. Yes.
Do you have time for one more question?
Yeah.
So we have a question from Sija. How do we tackle situations where we are unable to prove a complaint filed because there's not enough evidence? I mean, it's kind of a lot of committees face that situation, right? He said, she said, and therefore it is his word against hers, or vice versa. I have my own views on it, which we
See,
take
let
on.
me
Yeah,
let
but
us look
would love
at
to hear your view.
rape jurisprudence. Let us look at what the courts have said. Definitely, circumstantial evidence must always corroborate. There should be witnesses. Nevertheless, the testimony of the woman is paramount. And if
Yes.
you think
And the
that,
Supreme Court has laid that down,
yeah,
actually.
yeah, and it has said it successively, and that is what we said about Bhanwari Devi. You know,
Yes.
in her case, our whole argument was that the testimony of the prosecutrix is paramount. And
Yes.
definitely, I mean, cross-examine her as much as you want. You know, wet it for yourself. You know, you think she's constructing something. You think there is, you know, those kinds of creations. You know, cross-examine. The committee can
Yes.
always cross-examine. And I want to add one more question.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, this law has two sections that I'm not talking about, the 10-year-old law. It has a section of reconciliation. That
Yes.
before we begin on procedure, we make the man and the woman sit. But if the woman says, no, don't even have it. So you first ask the woman in confidence.
Naturally.
You really want to go ahead with the
She has the
reconciliation?
choice.
Yeah. And secondly, it has this business of malicious complaints.
Okay.
Now, there we very clearly, when we do our training, I mean, Antony, we've not spoken enough about training. I know you do trainings. There are some institutions that do training. औरत को झूठा बनाना, that the woman is a liar, is the easiest thing. सबसे आसान काम इस दुनिया में है, औरत तो झूठ बोल रही है. It's very easy. And then call it a malicious complaint.
Correct.
We always say, even if there is not enough evidence, how can you presume that the act did not happen? And again, we learn it through criminal law, where a murder could have happened. The body is there to talk about it. Yet, you can sometimes never prove. I mean, nobody gets arrested. It may be a blind case. So how can you say that the complaint is malicious? And therefore, we really are, in our trainings, we spend a lot of time where we brainstorm, because it's about people's attitude towards this. And many a times in the case, and this is for our friend who asked this question, when you're unable to clearly say that this person harassed, you can still give a recommendation that no harm should be brought to her employment. We would recommend that this person and she be kept separated. No retaliation. Yeah. You know, you have to advise the administration that she still continues to have a safe space. I may be a liar, but I need to have a safe space. You know, and like we say that even if you're quote unquote, you're being tried for terrorism, you still need a fair trial, you know. So the same way, you need the safe space is my human right. Yes. It can never be snatched away from me. Otherwise, I can't exist as a full human. So any final words, Bhanwari? कुछ बोलना चाहती हो? All the questions have happened? No, I know you had mentioned that you have a hard stop at 12, so I won't want to keep you waiting. Yeah, because I have to rush to some place. No. So I will just give a vote of thanks from our end, and then would love to hear from you and Bhanwari Devi ji before we close the session. Kavita, thank you so much. Very, very inspiring to hear you speak. We all talk about Vishaka. To hear from somebody who is almost synonymous with Vishaka herself is very inspiring to. So thank you for your time. भावरी देवी जी बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. आप आए हमारे कार्यक्रम पे, हम बहुत बहुत आभारी हैं. और बस आज आप जो कर रहे हैं, जो आप करते रहिए, क्योंकि आप बहुत लोगों के लिए प्रेरणा है. तो थैंक यू वेरी मच.
हमारी तरफ से बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद है. और आगे बढ़ाओ, चुप मत बैठो, चुप रहे वर्ष कोई फायदा को.
बिल्कुल, जरूर. So thank you for inviting me. I think
Thank you.
On some other occasion, we must have just Bhanwari Devi talk about a struggle rather than any of us doing it.
We will set that up as well.
And Bhanwari is going to be in Bombay on the 12th. If you people would like to coordinate with the organizers, then I can tell you who's bringing her to Bombay. then you could also bring her to your office. That would be very, very.
We would be honored.
आप
And so
बॉम्बे जा रहे हो ना, तो इनके दफ्तर में जाना.
ठीक पास में ही जगह है.
It's close by. She's asking. I don't know where the.
I'm not sure where the
आके
other
ले
office is.
जाएंगे.
But Kavita will coordinate with you, and
Yeah.
we would love to
Yeah.
host her. Yeah.
लेता लगता आऊंगी.
She said, if you come to take me, I will definitely.
जरूर आएंगे, हम जरूर आएंगे. इतना हम कर सकते हैं आपके लिए.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kavita. Thank you. Thank you, Bhavi Devi ji.
थैंक यू. मैं तरफ से बहुत ज्यादा.
Thank you.
Thank you.